Hey, my wonderful friends, hopefully healthy. What are we going to be talking about today? Something I've been talking about a lot for at least 5 or 6 years about the microbiome and the importance of the bacteria. Because the bacteria create an enzyme, and an enzyme does the chemistry in your body. Without the enzyme, you're not going to get the chemistry. And if you don't have the correct enzymes, you're going to be chronically ill. You're just never, ever going to be able to produce the chemistry that keeps that thing in place. Now, we're going to look at this because they're really now starting to get very, very deep into this, thank God. This is children with autism, ADHD, and anorexia share a common microbe imbalance. Well, there's more to it than just that they have an imbalance. Why is it? What are they wrong? What's the balance missing? Where can we get that balance from? Why did it go missing in the first place? A lot of questions that need to be answered, and I think I have some answers. Let's dig into this because this would change a whole lot of lives. A whole lot of lives. Some people's challenges in life is just staggering. And then you throw in an additional illness that's chronic and severe and very challenging to deal with. And it affects families and, it affects society in general. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And the reason is almost certainly that the bacteria that are in the gut are being damaged and they're not producing the enzymes in a sufficient quantity. I'm going to go through this with you and you make your own determination, but they are now starting to say, yes, these different bacterias we see, well, let's just go through it. Okay, this is from Science Alert. I get a lot of stuff, current things that they're talking about. And this is one of them, the autism, ADHD. It's all got to do with the gut. Because the gut is where you produce the chemistry of life. All right, and it's a new small study. Why do they do small studies? They similarly disrupted gut microbiomes. Some measures have more in common with each other than with their healthy neurotypical peers. They're sick because they don't have the right products produced in their body, which are produced by enzymes. It says this is from the University of Slovakia. The study used stool samples to assess the gut microbes of 117 children. That's not a small study, in my opinion. Exploratory study included 30 boys with autism spectrum, 21 girls with anorexia nervosa, 14 children with attention deficit, ADHD. The remaining samples are age and sex matched healthy and neurotypical children, providing a control group. So what they found was this. The ratio of two dominant groups of microbes in the human gut, bacteroidetes to Firmicutes, was higher across all three disorders than was typically seen in a control group. All right, so they had more bacteroides than Firmicutes in these people that had issues. All right, this increase in bacteroides, especially in autism, and a decrease in Firmicutes, particularly in ADH and AN, corresponds with findings of inflammatory disease where altered ratios have been linked to glucose metabolism. So it covers everything because that's where your biology is being created. Everything that's done in your body is done because of an enzyme, 100%. Not a single thing happens in your body that doesn't require an enzyme. Zero. Everything requires an enzyme. Anything that is a chemical reaction, that's how our bodies work in chemistry, requires an enzyme. It just wouldn't happen fast enough without the enzyme. And that's understood. So I'm not making that up. So it links to everything. It's linked to glucose metabolism, inflammation, satiety, how much you want to eat, obesity. The whole thing is here. And I agree with this 100%. If your gut is perfect and your bacteria is doing its job, your life is smooth. And that's what we found in studies we've been doing with kids that have autism. And they can come back enough to where they become pretty productive in society versus nonverbal, stimming, humming, banging their heads, a little bit out of control emotionally, never speaking, to being, basically normal. That, I believe, can be done, but there's certain ages where the chemistry in your body has to be right to create these different little organs in there that create the hormones, that create different things in your body that are these secretions. And I believe those factories which house the bacteria have to be set up correctly, and that requires the right chemistry. So what I'm getting at is there's certain ages we have to be sure that they have enough of these bacteria in their bodies to create the chemistry to fulfill the requirements of building the body at that age. When you're adding your central nervous system, when you're adding certain things in the body, just get built as you start to grow. You're not complete when you come out of the womb. Your digestive system basically doesn't exist. And then there's a whole bunch of other things that need to have the right chemistry to become what you consider normal growth. And that's what we're after right now. All right, we're going to be talking about digestion and about how your body absorbs what it needs. You first have your stomach, and there's all kind of acid going on in there, which breaks things down. Prior to that, you chew it in your saliva and all that. And then after it gets through that, you come into a whole series of secretions. The liver, the pancreas, all of this stuff. These are the enzymes. Enzymes are only created from bacteria. It's all about enzymes. So all of that stuff feeds into the digestive system as you're digesting. And there's a lot of stuff going on down in here. And we're going to see these kind of things in a second, and how the gut has all of that stuff. Peptic juices, bile, secretions, enzymes. It's all about enzymes. If you don't have the enzymes, you're not going to be able to digest. Hold on one second. I got to show you something else, which is the layers of tissue in the digestion. All right, this is ultra important. A baby, when they're born, the digestive system of a newborn, unlike the adult body, the fetal digestive system does not have a digestive function from birth. You don't digest. The stomach and the intestines are reduced, while the liver, with its hemopoietic function, is proportionally much more developed. So the liver is doing all the job of a lot of digestion, basically. And they have to have the right things. They have to have mother's milk or something that's in that correct formation to make their body grow. Now, here's the different types of tissues. All of these are different. You see all the little villi on that one? And now, what we're looking at is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, those 4 are these: the esophagus, the stomach. All right, this is the stomach lining. The small intestine, which is where you have all those little villi, and then you have the rectum, which is down here. These are absorption areas of extreme absorption, and a lot of chemical activity, all working with enzymes. Enzymes are the key, and this is just nothing but bacteria here. 100%. That's why they do fecal swabs. They look at the bacteria and say, well, what bacteria do you have? That should be the first thing they do when they test you for being sick. What's in the bacteria? You're not getting the right nutrition because you don't have the right bacteria, or you're not getting the right different bacteria to fight against these invaders. It's a special deal here. This is a very, very sophisticated system. It just seems, it just happens by itself. Well, no, it doesn't. If you kill off your bacteria, you're not going to get the enzymes. That's the bottom line. See right here. The digestion of complex carbohydrates. The saliva is used in the first important enzymatic elaboration of food inside the mouth. The saliva starts to break it all down. And there's got to be some function for the tonsils. I haven't figured it out. I really haven't looked into it well. I had my tonsils out when I was young. I don't know. Maybe it caused problems. Who knows? But as you get down through the digestive system, it's nothing more than a series of enzyme interactions breaking down these foods into particulates that can be used by the body. All right? And what happens is they get carried around in the body by these transition metals primarily, which hold on to a group of particles around the core. And they drag them through the body, and if somebody needs them, they can drop them off. They collect a couple of electrons, they drop a couple off, everything's good. It goes back and gets cleaned up, and they go back and get some more stuff to deliver. It's a very, very It's a serious ongoing process, 24 hours a day. That's why if your blood stops moving, you're pretty well done. You have to have that blood moving. You see this? Stimuli that intervene in the secretion of gastric juices, which are the enzymes. Visual and taste stimuli activate the secreting center of the cerebral bulb, and they initiate the gastric secretion thanks to the nerve endings of the vagus nerve. Once it arrives to the phytomes, the food itself stimulates the production of gastric juices. In fact, the pyloric mucosa secretes a hormone, gastrin, which keeps the glands of the stomach active. They don't secrete it. It's a product of bacteria. They're ribosomes. And they're just sitting waiting inside of all cells. There's literally 1 million or more in every single cell. So they don't really secrete it. They are activated by that. And your brain activates it. It's like a dog starts salivating when you see he knows he's going to get his food. And we also have that stimulation in us in a number of ways. When we expect some kind of gratification, it somehow transfers from the brain to all the other parts of the body that need to be stimulated. That's all I can tell you. All right, this is from the article from Duke about how food is processed. Now, it says, once eaten and digested, food particles enter the small intestine, which is covered with villi. And they're going to show it coming down. You see these little villi? All right, it's a velvety thin layer of villi. It's just amazingly zillions of them. And the food comes through, and it picks it up through these layer made up of different cell types. All right, so it's not just one type of coating. There's different types of cells. There's these enterocyte cells, goblet cells. Let's listen to what's going on here. Now, one of them, the intracycadina cell, is unlike the others. You see? Well, why is that? It is our gut sensor. In addition to communicating through the hormones, we discovered that the enteroserine cell also, now don't forget now, hormones are nothing more than enzymes as well. Hormones are just specific enzymes. If they're not, I'd like to know what they are. All right, so now they're going to go down and look at them close. Well, what did they discover about these cells? You see all these little nerves going into them? Look at all this stuff going on here. We call these enteroserine cells synapsing with nerves, neuropod cells. All right, so they're communicating to the nervous system to say, there's a certain type of food down here, or whatever's going on. They're sending signals back through the neural pathways. They call them neuropod cells. They sense and react to their environment. What's going on? Mechanical, thermal, chemical. And apparently there are different ones for different, or the same ones pick up different, I don't know, to be honest with you, but all of this stuff apparently is is being sensed by the gut lumen. Inside neuropod cells, signals from stimuli are converted into tiny electrical pulses. And you see how that one's different than this one here, and it's going down this little green pathway. All right, the pulses propagated in the synapses onto the efferent neuron of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve runs all the way up your back, right up to your brain. And that's where all of this stuff truncates into and goes right up. That's the vagus nerve. All right, so they're sending, it's hot down, it's cold down here, whatever it is. Vagal neurons carry the sensory information to the brainstem, linking the signals generated. So this is talking to your brain. Basically, think of it this way. Inside the small intestine, it's talking to your brain. It's saying, I got certain food down here, or I need something, or whatever. The neuropod cell connection with the vagus nerve serves as a conduit for the food in the gut to influence brain function within seconds. And I mean, it does. It's just instantaneously. This connection is also a potential portal for gut pathogens. Now, they think these pathogens can run up and access the brain through this, and I suppose they can. I'm not saying they can't, but more likely is you need the enzymes. The bacteria produce the enzymes, so if the bacteria get in your brain, well, that's a brain infection that wouldn't be good if they're bad bacteria. If they're good bacteria, they're doing just what they're supposed to do. So it says, this new knowledge is the foundation of designing therapies to treat disorders related to altered gut-brain signaling. The gut-brain signaling happens because of the enzymes. It's all about the enzymes. If you don't have the bacteria living in those areas where they see these are special cells. The cells themselves are only special in the fact that they're designed to house certain types of bacteria. The cell itself is not the creator of the enzyme. All right, so the article goes on to talk about the different types of bacteria associated with different types of disorders. And lower levels have been of a certain type of bacteria associated with inflammatory conditions like irritable bowel disease, colorectal cancer, and depression. Notably, in quotations, certain resemblances were observed in a microbiota tax abundances across all patient cohorts. All of them had the same situation. No, certain resemblances were observed in the microbiota, the gut bacteria, in abundances across all patient cohorts. That's why we need a database. And you need to take that information and see, are you low on certain things or high on certain things? It underscores the conceivable influence of gut microbiota composition on the behavioral manifestations of mental disorders. It's really just obvious, to be perfectly honest with you. I can't see how they don't understand this. I do understand the concern of putting in bacteria into a certain person that doesn't have it there. And where will it take up residence? Will it go to where it's supposed to? I believe it does, and it goes to these factories, which are these organs which house these bacteria, which create these enzymes. The bacteria live in the factories. Now, some other bacteria might invade that, yes, but if you got the good bacteria supposed to be there, they'll push the bad bacteria out, I believe. But the organs that secrete are secreting what the enzymes are because the bacteria live in there. That's my opinion. I would like to see some studies done on what bacteria live in what organs. That would be very interesting to see. All right, there's certain types of diseases that, like C. difficile, which is a bacterial infection, they almost can't stop it. It just keeps coming back until you get a new bacterial transplant. So you take and get a new microbiome transplant, and it takes care of the C. difficile and works fabulously almost every time. And there seems to be very little or no side effects. It's not like, because these are just normal bacteria that would live inside of your gut anyway, and you're just replacing them because yours are missing. And then it clears up the C. difficile. And it appears to affect almost everything. People that have had this for the C. difficile have reported all kinds of other things. Every condition you can think of appears to be affected by the bacteria in your gut, making the enzymes that make the chemistry. Emotions, right down to everything. Cancer too. And there's other things that are involved in cancer, which is the DNA repair mechanism. Your DNA gets damaged continuously all day long. Every single cell, they say, in your DNA is damaged multiple times every day and has to be repaired. And the repair mechanism appears to be strongly related to magnesium ions. They have noticed that with radiation. They don't have enough magnesium ions when they get irradiated. And they've noticed that with long COVID and COVID in general, and other diseases too, and chronic diseases as well. I don't think they're being able to repair their DNA. There's a lot of work to do here. This is not anything that's over, but it's just starting. Okay, this gut dysbiosis controls everything in your body, everything, 100%. Your emotions, your feelings, your health, cancer, all of that stuff. And it also controls being obese or not, it appears. This is Firmicutes and bacteroidetes. The ratio is a relevant marker of gut dysbiosis in obese patients. They all have the same stuff. And it says it's emerging as a promising target for management and prevention of inflammation, metabolic disorders in humans. And it's also associated with obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, all that stuff. Some studies had described that the gut microbiome of obese animals and humans exhibits a higher firmicute to bacteroid ratio compared with normal weight individuals, proposing this ratio is an eventual biomarker. Well, you have to have the right enzymes, and if you don't have the right bacteria, you will not have the right enzymes. As simple as that. It's very, very simple. All right, most bacteria create a certain ribosome, which is the enzyme. And that ribosome just keeps getting squirted out into the fluids of your body, floating around as a free floater, and then collects in cells. All right, and here's the way it works. They make them here and they shoot them out into the fluid-filled highway of the body, and like this is a membrane up the top, and then between that membrane and wherever the good stuff is down here, there's a layer which is got all these enzymes and these bacteria floating through there. It's the fluid-filled highway. All right, so they're in there trying to protect you, and what's in there is these little balls, and they're called ribosomes. And when they come out and they unsheath, that's because they get triggered. Something hits them that triggers them. And you remember you saw those nerve connections going. It would be a nerve or something that hits one of these and says, okay, it's time to go to work. Boom, they pop open and they create an enzyme. That's an enzyme, huge molecule like that. Now, in some cases, this enzyme breaks down food into little bitty pieces, and it goes boom, 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 boom. It never gets used up until it's done with its job. As soon as it hits whatever it hits, boom, it's done. Click chemistry, done. Now, this is like being electrocuted. Now, that amount of chemistry would take sometimes literally millions of years to do those half-life breakdowns, and this can do it in less than a second. Now, they also come from these balls, and they actually can create proteins. Proteins are like enzymes, only they build things up. Enzymes break things. These build things. So that's what's coming out from these ribosomes. And the ribosomes, don't forget, the ribosomes are a product of the bacteria just floating around in the body. There's just zillions of them squirting out here like crazy. And they are all over, and inside of every cell there can be millions of them. Literally, they're that small. So here's the process all at one time. The bacteria has its own DNA, which makes it a certain type of bacteria. Its program says, I'm going to make a certain type of ribosome. All right, and that's the ribosome. All right, it comes out in a little chain like this, and it puts it into a ball. It makes it into a ribosome. You see? And then that programs the mRNA to go down and break in to our DNA and change the DNA to make us healthy again when we're sick. That's one type of bacterial enzyme. All right, that's the one that actually changes our DNA. Other ones break down food. All right, they go out and just chew up food. Like one of these things here. You eat something, a hot dog, and it comes through there, and the hot dog has stuff in it, but it's not you're not going to be able to use it until you break it down into its very, very tiny molecules. And that's what this does. Done. It's that fast. Very, very elegant chemistry. And that's the enzyme. And again, that comes from a bacteria. You don't have the bacteria, you're not going to get the enzyme. You don't have the enzyme, first of all, your DNA is going to get invaded and damaged because you don't have enough enzymes to protect it. Those enzymes hang right around that DNA. All right, I'm going to home you in on this cell. Well, first of all, let's start out here so I can tell you what's going on. All of this little stuff here, which you're going to see very close up in a second, is what's called the rough endoplasmic reticulum. It's saturated with ribosomes. Ribosomes are just free floaters. They're everywhere. That just points to the ribosomes are inside of this cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is the fluid. And then you got all these other things that are in here, the mitochondria. They make the energy for the cell. This is the key. Right here is the nucleolus, the nucleus. This baby here has virtually all the DNA in it. Its DNA is the program that drives this cell. It's a program. So all is a program. If you don't have the right program in there, this cell is not going to react correctly. And what controls the right program is the sequence of the DNA. If somebody invades this area here and gets in and damages the DNA, which does happen apparently quite frequently, your other guys have to come back in and fix it. And that's built in. It's built into it's called a template. And when they damage the DNA, it still leaves a template. They can come back and say, oh, you left here, boom, 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 boom. You're supposed to be attached to that guy. You're supposed to be attached to this guy. And they rebuild it. Now, to show you closely here what we're looking at is we know the ribosomes are everywhere. And there can be millions in one single cell. This is one single cell, of which we have trillions. Now, this is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. And they congregate on here. And you see this? This looks like a maze to get through to the entrance into where the DNA exists. Because that's where the DNA is, in the nucleolus, in the nucleus. Primarily. So that's, you want to have enough ribosomes, which means the only place the ribosomes come from is the enzymes. From the bacteria. And then the ribosomes pop open. Originally they're like this, so tiny that millions could fit in this one cell, along with all the other stuff. And then it says, hey, and it hits it, and it goes, it pops open like this and goes and attacks something, or breaks down some food, or does whatever it's supposed to do. But the ribosomes are the key, basically, to health. And without the ribosomes, without the bacteria, you don't get the ribosomes. Without the ribosomes, you do not have the enzymes. Without the enzymes, you cannot do the chemistry. Absolutely impossible. All right, I'm going to leave it where it started. Children with autism, ADHD, anorexia share a common microbe imbalance. I should think we can get a handle on this. And I think that I've shown that it's not all that difficult. The first thing we need is a microbiome database of what is natural bacteria versus, people that have chronic illness bacteria. It can float around a little bit. You're not going to have the exact same bacteria every day, I wouldn't think. However, you should create almost a pretty good pattern. Although you may eat something terrible that really disrupts it, and that day you're going to have bad bacteria and you're not going to feel well. That's very possible. But bacteria, it almost instantly is producing these enzymes, the ribosomes are the enzymes, almost instantly. So within hours, you should recover. Like they say, I got a hangover or whatever it is. You poisoned your body. Yes, of course you got a hangover. But your body fixes you back up, as long as you have the good bacteria. Now, if you got damaged bacteria, that hangover can make it last for your whole life. But not really. When you get invaded by toxins, that's a different issue than getting invaded by another bacterial species trying to take you over. When you're getting damaged by toxins, everybody's just a little weak. But when you get infected with other bacteria, that's a whole different situation. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. I think we're starting to understand this. Now, I have some other people I'm working with, and boy, I tell you, if we could get this thing going, we could change the world. The amount of lives that are affected by this situation is just staggering, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I think we can get a handle on this, and it actually would decrease the cost of health. Right now, in the United States, you can't afford even to get health insurance. It's just so expensive. You just have to hope you don't get sick. You get sick, well, you can't go and get it. It's a bad situation. If the first thing we could do is make sure that your bacteria is all right, then after that, you might develop some kind of crazy thing. Who knows? But if you don't have the right bacteria, you are going to be sick. I don't care what they say. You're not going to be well. You're always going to have irritable bowel. You're going to have Crohn's disease. You're going to have one of these lingering things, long COVID. You never recover because your bacteria is not there to make the enzymes to make you recover. And then if you start to go and take all kinds of drugs sometimes you affect all kinds of other things. Antibiotics kill all the good stuff as well as the bad stuff. They don't target just one thing. Most of them are broad spectrum. And then you're really in trouble if you can't replace what they killed. And the other things that are issues are certain herbicides. Something that kills the weeds will kill your bacteria inside your body. Same stuff. Because it's working with what I call a sugarcane pathway. And the weeds and your bacteria use the same pathway. We don't use it, so they figure it won't hurt us. Well, if it kills our bacteria, that's us. Same stuff. We need that bacteria. And all we really need to do is replace it. If it's being killed, we could probably replace it almost daily. But we have to know what we're dealing with before we can even start to understand disease. Right now, it's, I call it, they are practicing medicine. Let's practice with this. They don't really know what they're doing. I'm telling you, it's the enzymes, and they're not looking at that. I don't think, not much, because they don't understand the chemistry. The chemistry is so fast that they don't understand how much is going on within a millisecond, which changes all kinds of stuff in that molecule. And if you don't have that happening, you're sick. All right, I know I'm just rambling on here, but this has to be addressed. All right, I love you all. Bye.